don't yet know him as Severus Snape, but thousands of you soon will. That's his part in the new Harry Potter movie that's set to break all box office records. Of course, you might already know him for his parts in Sense and Sensibility, Truly, Madly, Deeply, Die Hard, Dogma, and many other roles that have made him one of Britain's best-known actors. So with all that behind him, how far does he share in the Harry Potter hype? Alan Rickman, a very warm welcome to the programme.
Nice to see you.
You managed just to sneak into the premiere, did you? To get the last half hour?
Yeah, about the last 40 minutes, because we're doing a Sunday matinee of, I'm in Private Lives at the moment in the West End, and we play Sunday matinee.
It's a double bill of Rickman in the West End, isn't it?
Yeah, it depends on your taste. in the flesh or blown up on celluloid.
How did you like it, what you saw?
It looked tremendous to me. I think the thing is that whenever I was on the set and children were coming in and visiting, the endless refrain was, wow, it's just like the book. And I think that was certainly Chris Columbus's and the producer's aim to be faithful to J.K. Rowling's imagination. And I think, given the fact that at the end of the screening last night the entire cinema stood up and cheered, I guess they've done it.
You're going to get a decent share. I know this is something that you've been campaigning for, you and British actors and equity, to get a decent share.
Well,
compared to your American counterparts.
Yeah, I mean, we've been taking advantage of for far too long, and I'm not talking about people who are, you know, whose names are sort of above the title. I'm talking, and as indeed we all are, about the people whose livelihood depends on a reasonable return.
A proper rate for a day's work.
Well, their work
Hollywood
is shown for the next 15, 20 or 30 years, and perhaps when their working life is sort of over to any large extent, it would be good for them to know that when a film is shown, their work receives some recompense.
Are you receiving adequate recompense this time around?
I think you better ask my agent.
But it's clearly something that's rankled, because you've said in the past something has to be done about this. This is an absolute disgrace. I mean, you clearly feel strongly about it.
Well, it is a disgrace.
You and other actors.
I think it's a disgrace that English actors get taken advantage of. It's very different here.
Paid a flat rate. This is the problem,
Buyout.
isn't it? But then you don't have to agree to it, do you?
Well, you don't have any option. You don't do the job.
That's it. It's a take it or leave it offer, is it? And the Americans...
That's why the union is now fighting for it, to make it part of union equity agreements.
You used to rail against having to go to Hollywood to make big movies. Do you still do that? You said it's awful that we all have to toddle off to Hollywood. You still wish these kinds of movies could be made by
We all say lots of
British...
stupid things, and you wish you could...
Which we religiously dig into and bring up again years later.
Rub them out, but there they are, you know, they're hoist by your own petard all the time. And, well, I now have some experience of a town that I'm actually very fond of, and it's filled with very close friends.
L.A.?
Yeah. I mean, if I go there, I have a kind of rule, which is don't read the trades and trade magazines, and don't go to any premieres and parties and all of that. So I work there, and I live there, and I see my friends, and travel.
There is an LA without premieres and parties.
You have the life there that you want to have, and that to me is you're renting a house in the hills and seeing friends and reading books and going to the movies.
A place where British actors do extraordinarily well. I mean, it was a huge vote of confidence in this film, the Harry Potter film. There was an entire British cast, wasn't it?
Well, it was a measure of J.K. Rowling's power, because it wasn't going to be that way.
She insisted on it.
Mm-hmm.
How hard a fight was that?
I think if it's in her contract, she just dug her heels in, you know. She's got a wonderful sense of when to say no.
What does it say, what does it say about the point you've reached in your career?
Harry Potter?
Yes. Did it stretch you? Get a buzz out of it?
No, not hugely. It's great fun to be part of something that's going to be a kind of marker point, I suppose, in cinema history. Whatever people make of the film on, you know, on any critical level. It's an event like the Beatles.
So will his events sometimes do open more doors? Is that the idea? Is that why you took the part?
No, I mean, at this point in time, I kind of do what interests me, and where I feel that I'm going to... you see, I think that my job is to be a storyteller, and actors are very much part of a storytelling chain. There's the piece of work, and one side of it's the performer, and the other side of it's an audience, and it's... well, I should say there's the piece of work, the actor's in the middle between the piece of work and the audience, and it's my job to be as efficient a storyteller as possible, and to look for as many interesting avenues as come up. And you can never predict what you're going to say yes and no to, because it'll probably depend on what you just did.
But you say the job gets harder and harder. I think you said a few years ago, the more you understand what you're capable of, the less the instrument can do it physically.
It's true, because
really?
the more you kind of understand what, you know, the imagination has a whole load of ideas, and the equipment seems to be less and less capable of matching the imagination.
Why? You're a young man. I mean, you're painting yourself as having waning, failing powers, almost.
No, I think you're just more and more aware of the disparity between...
But you're not living up to what the part is asking.
Maybe your
of you?
imagination grows, or something. You know, in rehearsals for Private Lives, and Lindsay Duncan and I would both say to the director, you know, you have to realise that we're right up against the edge of our ability here.
In what way? Why? Why are you up against the edge?
Well, I think we only discovered it through rehearsals, that this was... We discovered our love of the play in rehearsals, and that came out of a deep respect for the skill of its construction. And when you start to eventually analyse how a piece of work is constructed, it sort of asks you to be in a restoration comedy in the first act, to switch to Chekhov in the second act, and finish up in Fado in the third, and those are very different horses to ride.
Wide range.
Yes, and you need to have your feet in the saddle quite firmly, and yeah, and so I think at every performance of that, certainly you're aware of how difficult the job can be, but also of how much fun. And the same is true of Harry Potter. And you have to use your instrument very differently. You know, on film you're perhaps spending most of the time waiting to work, and so you've got to keep that energy release in check, and but not let it go to sleep.
But do you feel some nights when you go on Private Lives, for instance, that you can't ride those horses too much?
It's a very unpredictable thing. The nights when you're feeling most tired and most remote from being in any way capable of doing it, you go out there and some piece of alchemy happens, and you're freer. The nights when you're feeling free in the wings and you go out there, then suddenly something tightens up. I don't know, maybe we need sort of equivalent of the sports psychologist.
But you don't expect to be a machine. I mean, you're not a machine, you're not a robot.
No, it's a live event, and so you're at the mercy of some version of the elements when you go out there.
You make it sound very unpredictable.
It is.
Does it feel that way?
And so it should be.
Edgy, dangerous.
Well, the play, the
could come unstuck.
Could come very unstuck, and has.
People don't know that when they pay their money, do they?
They don't have a clue.
They're getting Alan Rickman professional after all these years.
You feel moments when it comes unstuck and the whole audience knows that something's gone wrong, and a certain silence descends, because they're suddenly aware that